So you might be wondering, with a man dressed as a bat every night, what is Halloween like in Gotham City? Well, I wanted to look into that today, and Batman actually does have some Halloween stories, and I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about this one, and this actually collects 3 different stories that were published in Legends of the Dark Knight, and Legends of the Dark Knight kind of focused on publishing standalone stories, attracting new readers outside of the main continuity, and bringing together different creative teams. And one team that they brought together was Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, who you might know went on to do The Long Halloween and several other comics together, and they would not have made The Long Halloween if it was not for Batman Haunted Night. These are actually 3 different books called Fears, Madness, and Ghosts. And there is a little bit of a foreword in this copy I have from Archie Goodwin, who was the editor at the time, and he talked about the great chemistry that the two of them had, how this was supposed to be a one-off thing from 1993's Halloween special, and it just worked so well that they did 94 and 95 as well. He writes, the first Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween special sold out within weeks of its first appearance. This was going to be it, a one-time thing. Then Jeph and Tim had some thoughts about Alice in Wonderland that grew into Madness. That was going to be it, except that they had another thought about Charles Dickens, and suddenly there was Ghost from one story. Somehow a tradition evolved. Is the tradition over? Well, it was going to be with this collection, except Jeph and Tim had this idea, not just for a special, but a special series involving a year in Batman's life. A year that covers 13 months. It's called The Long Halloween. They're already underway with it. As an editor, I'm excited, but the 7-year-old in me finds his knees begin to shake. So that is Archie Goodwin's statement. It's a really nice little foreword in there where he talks a little bit about the Legends of the Dark Knight series and Tim Sale and Jeph Loeb coming together and creating this fun little Halloween tradition that eventually became a year in Batman's life and one of the most iconic Batman stories. But we are going to focus on the 3 that are in here. So continue forward to the first story, Fears, and this is a story about Scarecrow as the main villain. In this story, he knocks out all of the electric in Gotham City, so the entire city is basically blacked out. And some of the panels in this one can actually be kind of hard to read just because of how dark the entire thing is, but I actually really like that. I really did like this story. And right away, Batman answers our question, what is Halloween like in Gotham City? All hell breaks loose. It's not creepy or horror themed at all. These are very, very mild books. These are fairly family friendly books, so they're not nearly as graphic as things can get in The Long Halloween. These are just more fun Halloween stories. They're not too deep, they're not too serious, and they just kind of explore some of Batman's fear around the day of Halloween. And Bruce Wayne has a mandatory Halloween party he has to go to, but of course he doesn't want to be there. He wants to be taking down the Scarecrow, but there's this weird lady that comes in and starts distracting him a little bit. And personally, I don't think this whole storyline with this lady really added much to anything. I think it definitely could have just been cut out completely. I would have preferred to see more of the Scarecrow than this, but this just kind of feels like a trope that was in a lot of Legends of the Dark Knight books where kind of plays into Batman's fear, which I guess maybe why that's here. of being alone and losing people. There's certainly a trope in a lot of Legends of the Dark Knight that I've read where sort of a lady comes out of nowhere that's a little bit weird and sketchy. And Alfred can normally sniff out something weird's happening, but Bruce falls hard for some of these bad ladies and just doesn't see through it. It didn't really stick out to me because I have read this same trope in a bunch of other Batman stories at this point, so to me, I just would have preferred to see more of the Scarecrow in this, but it was a very fun read, and you can definitely see the great chemistry between Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale starting to come together. And I really like the art in this one. There are some parts that are all in black and white, and they look really beautiful. Scarecrow gets Batman under his fear toxin, and this was a very interesting part of the story visually, and that's why I feel like I would have liked to see more of Scarecrow in this. But overall, not a bad first effort for Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. Then in 1994, they teamed up again and created Madness, an Alice in Wonderland inspired story, which had the Mad Hatter as the lead villain, and it also had a heavy focus on the relationship between Barbara Gordon and her father, Jim Gordon. And that's always interesting to see. I like Jim Gordon. I like seeing a little bit more of his story. So that was cool. And the Mad Hatter is essentially kidnapping children on Halloween and recreating an Alice in Wonderland tea party. And Barbara Gordon is his Alice that he gets. And it's a pretty good story. It's definitely, very much a fun Halloween story, like I said, and not really spooky and creepy. But I enjoyed it for what it was. I don't particularly have that much investment in Alice in Wonderland itself. But it was a neat little story, probably my least favorite of the bunch here, but still solid effort. Definitely something different, and that's what I like about these two, is that they all have something a little different to them. And I really like the little dichotomy here between Bruce Wayne and Jim Gordon. How Jim Gordon is just sitting there and his teenage daughter is pissing him off, and he's just thinking about how Batman probably has no one to go home to. And then you have Batman on the flip side, who is doing everything he's doing because he has lost everyone. And it gets a little bit more into the fear of Batman, of losing people, of being alone. We see that he used to read Alice in Wonderland with his mother, so of course this reignites memories that he had, relives the memory of the night his parents were murdered, and I actually really appreciated the depiction in this story. I know that seeing the Waynes murdered is kind of an overdone thing that people are sick of at this point, but the way it's done here is a little bit different and more subtle. You more so see Bruce and his mother getting ready to go out that night, and then it sort of transitions, and we see her put on the pearls and then flash to Crime Alley. And then Batman just breaks down and starts screaming for his mother. So back at the Gordon house, Barbara Gordon storms out and gets kidnapped by some goons, and then Jim Gordon goes in her room and finds her diary, sees all the stuff she's been writing about him, and figures out he needs to go find her and make things right. But like I said before, she was taken by the Mad Hatter and forced to recreate Alice in Wonderland. Very weird. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. This one's just a little bit too weird of a concept for me. It was lighthearted, but just definitely my least favorite of the three. Not one I would really read over and over again, I guess. But the last story was one that I actually really enjoyed. This one might be my favorite one, and it's called Ghosts. And this is one that is based on A Christmas Carol. It's definitely like a recreation of that classic story of the ghosts of past, present, and future, but with Halloween, and we see this in the form of Poison Ivy as the ghost of past. And we get a flashback to a time that Bruce Wayne was about to go trick-or-treating with his dad. But his dad, the doctor, got an emergency call because Halloween is so hectic, so he always expected his dad to be busy on Halloween particularly. And it definitely stuck with Bruce, not having those core memories with his father, because he is visited by sort of the ghost of his father who informs him of the spirits that will be coming. Next, she brings him to his first meeting with Lucius Fox, where Bruce is on a trip to Paris, and Lucius says, "You're Bruce Wayne with my expertise in finance, why don't we collaborate?" And at the time, Bruce turned his offer down. The next visitor is the Joker, who represents the present, and this is shown through children being afraid to approach Wayne Manor on Halloween while trick-or-treating. And the last one is Death, who shows Batman the ultimate reality that he dies alone and nobody remembers all the good that he does. For all he did and for all the nights that he sacrificed, he still died alone and unfulfilled. So he wakes up from this nightmare and he knows what he has to do. Alfred's sarcastically like, "You need me to get your suit ready?" And Batman is like, "No." Bruce decides to take the night off being Batman and hand out candy to trick-or-treaters. And he just said the police can take care of it. And I really like that. I think it's very sweet. I love those moments where you really feel the compassion and humanity of Bruce Wayne. That is very fundamental to the character of Batman, that he is compassionate to children, and so to think that kids were afraid of him is not right. I think that was absolutely a great Batman moment, and these were some fun little stories for Halloween. They're definitely not the greatest things ever. They can definitely be a little cliche, but in ways that I like and appreciate, especially coming from the Batman universe. And I have this old collected edition. You can actually get this in the recent collected edition of The Long Halloween, so that's a cool way to read this, but overall, I really appreciate this. I think that The Long Halloween is a great story. Most people would agree it's one of the best Batman stories out there, and we wouldn't have that if it weren't for this, and I think it's so cool because I am such a fan of the Legends of the Dark Knight run that one of the most influential Batman stories out there was inspired, kind of spawned out of Legends of the Dark Knight. I think it's so cool that Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale were just kind of brought together and created some of the greatest comics that have been written. So, happy Halloween, and thank you for checking this out. Let me know what you thought of that, and let me know what your favorite thing is to read for Halloween. As always, thank you for watching. Peace out.